Let's begin by looking at a duple meter, a triple meter, and then a quadruple meter. Understand that duple simply means two. And so in Finale, for the number of beats, we found out that you could go up to, it's like 100. But you can also go down to 1, or if you want it to be duple, the top number is going to be a 2. That's what duple means, is that there are two somethings in a measure. But also realize that the somethings can be any note value. So you could have a measure of 230 seconds why would you not want to have that time signature of 230 seconds?
I don't know. Part of my real weakness is not having any relationship between what's going on here and how music sounds and how the two things bear any relationship to each other. But I know that with any of these time signatures, it's really to make the music more sensible to the player.
Exactly. But let's go ahead and...
But you're asking me specifically, why wouldn't this be sensible to the player?
Yes, and the answer is that we're not used to seeing it. It would be annoying because what you would have to do in 232 time is you would have to take a 30-second note, and you could put two of those in a measure, and then you could go on to another measure and put two more 30 seconds. So every measure would have 230 seconds, and the first thing that a musician would do when they saw that was realize it wasn't something that they're used to seeing, and would probably be annoyed by it. That's really the reason. There's nothing mathematically wrong. The other thing is that if you wanted if you wanted these beats to go faster, you'd have to use 64th notes. So visually, it starts to become a little bit disturbing, but theoretically, there's not a problem with it. Now, as far as what it sounds like, well, it's just going to sound like two notes happening. And so again here, and if I set it to be, looks like it's so impractical that Finale won't actually let me set the time signature to be based on a 30-second note. So for this argument, let's go to, let's change the time signature again, and let's go to, let's make it 2/16. What this means is you could put 2/16 notes in a measure, and that measure would be full. So you would simply have two beats per measure. Now sound-wise, again, that really has no effect on the sound. If I go in and I set 16th note to 60, all it means is that you're going to hear one sound per second. So each one of those notes lasted for 1 second. Now, are you starting to get the notion of how setting your tempo directly affects the sound of the music? Now, suppose that I left a standard tempo of quarter note equals 60, which really you don't need to calculate now how 16th notes figure into quarter notes and what the mathematical relationship. That's unnecessary. With Finale, you can just hit it. But there would be really no sense in a meter of defining what a quarter note equals if you're telling the musician to focus on 2/16 notes. The only time it would really make sense to define the speed of a quarter note would be in 2/4 time, where the quarter note is the
Doesn't
beat.
the tempo govern all of it, no matter what?
Yes, but why would you define the speed of a quarter note unless a quarter note was significant in the way you set it up?
Okay. So
Okay.
no matter what, you've got to define the tempo. It doesn't matter if it's 16 or 32nd or
Correct. And in
whatever.
Finale, we define the tempo by selecting a note value and then telling it a speed.
Mhm.
So the point is this: why in a meter of 216, why would I define the speed of a quarter note? That wouldn't make sense. Obviously, it can be done, but it would be better off to define the speed of the note that is the beat. So let's map it together, and let's define the tempo based on the speed of the 16th note. So now when I say a 16th note is a second long, now that makes sense. And I'm saying that there are two notes that are a 16th, that are a second long per measure. And these are all duple meters. So right now we've actually addressed two issues, that of the relationship between tempo and beat value. We've seen the flexibility of how beat value can be changed to really whatever you want. And in the real world, we really don't see 216 very often. The common meters that we see in real life, in duple meters, two of something, most frequently we see 2/4 time, where in this case, it would clearly make sense to define the speed of the quarter note, because in a measure, there are going to be, let's just have this on the screen just so you can see what's going on. Maps over there. There will be two quarter notes. So if I set the quarter note to equal 60, there will be two events that last a second each, and those events are visually represented by the symbol quarter note. But what we've seen is that the quarter note is arbitrary. It can be anything on any of this palette. And in Western music, we tend to run the gamut from 64th notes, actually 32nd notes, 64th. Finale will actually make 128th notes. So we have the capability of going as small as a 128th note to as large as a double whole note. But we tend to use, because most of the sounds that we make, and probably all of the sounds that you and I make on a regular functioning daily basis, can easily be represented by a quarter note or possibly an eighth note.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
Hey, hon.
So we see a couple of things happening. We see the defining of a tempo is which beat you, or which notational symbol you choose is a function of a composer's choice. We're not limited to thinking in quarter notes. And notationally, we can create a meter that has any value representing two somethings. And when there are two somethings, two half notes, two whole notes would be strange, but possible. Two quarter notes, very commonly seen. Two half notes, we see that fairly often. Two eighth notes, we could live with that. We don't see it very often, but we did see it in this example. The point is that as long as there are two somethings, that's a duple meter. And so let's kind of leave off duples by saying two quarter notes. And then we're going to define the speed by a quarter note equals 60. So what that means is that two events that last a second long will occur, and then another measure will happen. That's the story of duple meters.